When I first married Ryan, I thought I had won the lottery. He was charming, successful, and came from what everyone in our small town called the perfect family. His mother, Linda, was adored by her neighbors, always baking pies for church events, smiling at everyone she met, and volunteering at the animal shelter every weekend. But behind that sweet, grandmotherly smile was a woman who knew exactly how to manipulate people and destroy them if she wanted to. At first, Linda treated me like the daughter she never had. She helped me decorate our new home, offered to babysit when our first daughter, Emma, was born, and insisted I call her mom. I was naive. I believed every act of kindness came from love. Then little things started to change. She'd, accidentally, throw away Emma's favorite toys, saying she thought they were trash. She'd whisper to my husband that I was too controlling when I set rules for bedtime or sugar. When our second daughter, Lily, was born, she began making comments like, "Poor Ryan, surrounded by all these girls, maybe it's time he had some real peace." It got worse, so much worse, when my husband got a new job and started working longer hours. That's when Linda decided to step in and help. What she really did was start poisoning my daughters against me, slowly, subtly, like a snake wrapping itself around its prey. And I didn't even see it happening until it was almost too late. Because by the time I found out what she'd done, the lies, the manipulation, the secrets she'd been hiding for years, the damage was already ripping my family apart. But when the truth finally came out, it didn't just destroy me. It destroyed her. It started so small that I almost didn't notice it. After Ryan's promotion, he was traveling 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. Linda offered to help out with the girls while I worked from home. It sounded innocent enough. She'd pick them up from preschool, make dinner, and tuck them in before I wrapped up my workday. But within a few weeks, things started to feel off. Emma, my 4-year-old, suddenly didn't want me to brush her hair anymore. She'd cross her arms and say, "Grandma says you don't know how to do it right." I laughed it off at first. Kids repeat things without meaning any harm. But then, Lily, who was barely 2, started crying whenever I tried to put her to bed, screaming, "No. Grandma says you don't love us when you're mad." My stomach twisted every time. When I brought it up to Ryan, he sighed and said I was overreacting. "Babe, my mom adores the girls. She's just old-fashioned. Don't take everything she says personally." So I tried to let it go. I tried to believe him. Then I began finding strange things around the house. A photo of Linda with the girls, but cropped so I wasn't in it. New clothes for the girls that I hadn't bought, tucked neatly in their drawers, ones that looked just like the ones Linda used to dress Ryan in as a kid. Even their bedtime stories changed. They stopped asking for Mommy's story and only wanted Grandma's. It wasn't until Emma looked me dead in the eye one morning and said, "Grandma says you're not a real mommy because you don't bake," that I realized this wasn't random. Linda was training them to see me differently, not as their mother, but as some outsider who didn't belong in their perfect little world. And when I confronted her about it, she smiled, that same sweet, fake, practiced smile, and said, "Oh honey, you're too sensitive. I'm just trying to help them become better girls. You should be grateful." But something about the way she said it, calm, smug, certain, sent chills down my spine. I didn't know it yet, but that was only the beginning. Because what she did next would turn my home into a battlefield. It was around Christmas when things started to truly unravel. Ryan had just come home from a week-long business trip, and the girls ran straight past me to hug their grandmother, who had shown up, unexpectedly, to drop off presents. I was happy at first, until I noticed the gifts. Matching gold lockets for the girls, each engraved with the words, "Grandma's Angels." Inside each locket was a tiny picture of Linda, but not me. When I opened Emma's to look closer, she snatched it back and said, "Grandma said you'd be jealous." That one sentence hit me like a punch to the gut. Later that night, after Linda left, I told Ryan I was uncomfortable with the way she was trying to replace me. He rubbed his temples and said, "Can you just stop picking fights with her? She's helping us. You're imagining things." That was her plan all along, to make me look unstable, dramatic, ungrateful. A few days later, I overheard Emma talking to her little sister in their room. Her tiny voice was saying, "Mommy's mad because she doesn't want Grandma to love us more." My heart sank. I recorded what they said on my phone, hoping to show Ryan proof. But when I played it for him, he shook his head. You're twisting their words, Sarah. They're just kids. You need to stop making my mom the villain. That's when I realized Linda had done something even worse. She wasn't just turning my daughters against me, she had already turned Ryan too. Then came the day that proved I wasn't paranoid. I went to pick the girls up early from Linda's house one afternoon. She didn't expect me to be there yet. I walked in quietly and heard her voice from the kitchen, soft, careful, and full of poison. Greater than, your mommy doesn't really like living with you, girls. That's why she lets Grandma take care of you so much. If she leaves one day, don't be sad, Grandma will always be here. I froze in the doorway, shaking. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. My daughters looked confused, scared even. When she finally noticed me standing there, Linda's face didn't even flinch. She just smiled and said, "Oh, Sarah. You're early. We were just talking about how much the girls love you." That was the day I knew. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. It was war. After that day at her house, I tried to keep my distance. I told Ryan I didn't want Linda watching the girls anymore. Of course, that didn't go over well. He accused me of overreacting, said I was being emotional and jealous of his mother's bond with the kids. He even called Linda on speakerphone so she could clear the air. She played her part perfectly. "Oh, sweetheart," she cooed, "I think Sarah's just tired. Being a mom is hard. I'll stay away for a while, if that's what she needs." But she didn't stay away. She just got smarter. A week later, Emma's teacher called me. "Mrs. Jacobs," she said cautiously, "I just wanted to check in." Emma told the class that her mommy doesn't like being home with her and might move away. "Is everything okay?" I felt my knees go weak. I knew exactly where that came from. That night, I tried to talk to Ryan again, but instead of listening, he snapped. "My mom told me you've been acting cold lately, Sarah. Maybe you're the one pushing them away." I couldn't believe it. Linda had somehow convinced him that I was the problem. The next day, I found out just how far she was willing to go. When I arrived to pick up the girls from daycare, the receptionist handed me an envelope. "Your mother-in-law dropped this off earlier," she said. Inside was a printed letter, addressed to Child Services. It was filled with lies. Claims that I left the girls alone for hours. That I yelled at them. That I was mentally unstable. I could barely breathe. The worst part, it was signed, a concerned family member. I wanted to confront her that night, but Ryan came home before I could leave. He had that same cold look in his eyes. "Mom told me you've been threatening her," he said. "What's going on, Sarah?" I didn't even bother arguing. What was the point? He didn't see it. He didn't want to see it. But that night, I made myself a promise. If Linda wanted a war, she was going to get one. Because I finally realized the truth, she wasn't just trying to control me. She wanted to erase me from my own family. And I wasn't going to let that happen. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in the dark, listening to Ryan's steady breathing beside me, feeling the weight of betrayal pressing against my chest. Every word Linda had said, every manipulative smile, every seed of doubt she planted, it all came flooding back. And I knew then, the only way to stop her was to make everyone see who she really was. So I came up with a plan. First, I started recording everything. Every conversation, every voicemail, every time she tried to drop by unannounced. I downloaded a home security app and set up a few discreet cameras, one in the living room, one near the front door, and one in the girls' playroom. Then, I played nice. I started texting her like nothing was wrong, thanking her for her help, sending her pictures of the girls, pretending I was too exhausted to argue anymore. I knew it was the only way to get her to let her guard down. And it worked. Within a week, she was back to her old self, showing up with groceries, picking the girls up early from daycare, as a surprise, even inviting me for lunch, to make peace. I accepted. During that lunch, she smiled sweetly across the table, sipping her tea, pretending to be the caring mother-in-law again. But then, when she leaned in close, her tone changed, low, sharp, like a knife wrapped in velvet. "Greater than, you can keep fighting me, Sarah," she whispered, "but you'll lose. Ryan will always believe me. The girls already do. You're just making yourself look crazy." I didn't react. I just nodded, pretending to agree. What she didn't know was that my phone, sitting next to my plate, was recording the entire thing. That night, when I replayed the audio, I cried, not because I was sad, but because I finally had proof. Proof of who she really was. But I wasn't done. I needed more. So I set up a little trap. I told Linda that Ryan and I were considering moving out of state for his job, that we might take the girls with us. I said it casually, like a test balloon. Her reaction was instant. She froze, smiled tightly, and said, "Oh, I don't think you'll be going anywhere." The way she said it, confident, almost mocking, sent chills down my spine. I didn't know what she meant yet. But I was about to find out. Because 2 days later, something happened that nearly destroyed everything I'd built. 2 days later, I learned just how dangerous Linda really was. It was a Thursday morning. I was making breakfast when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find 2 people standing there, a man and a woman in business attire, holding clipboards. "Mrs. Jacobs," the woman asked politely. "We're from Child Protective Services. We received a report of possible neglect involving your daughters. We just need to ask you a few questions." My heart dropped. Linda. It had to be Linda. I let them in, my hands trembling as I answered their questions. They inspected the house, checked the girls' rooms, even looked in the fridge. By the time they left, I was shaking so badly I could barely stand. Ryan came home later that evening, furious, not at his mother, but at me. "She told me this would happen," he shouted. "She said you were becoming unstable, that you might do something drastic. And now CPS is at our door. Do you have any idea how bad this looks for us?" I tried to explain that this was her doing, that she'd been manipulating everything from the start, but he just stormed off. It hit me then. I was completely alone. I thought my recordings would be enough, but I realized something terrifying. Linda wasn't just attacking me emotionally anymore. She was coming for me legally. She was trying to make me unfit. And the worst part, she was winning. The next morning, I dropped the girls off at daycare and came home to find Linda's car parked outside my house. She was sitting there, calm as ever, waiting. When I stepped out, she rolled down her window, smiled that sickly sweet smile, and said, "You see, Sarah, I told you. You shouldn't mess with me. I'm only protecting my granddaughters." I wanted to scream, to tell her she was a monster. But I didn't. Instead, I whispered, "You're going to regret this." Because that day, I stopped being scared. I stopped playing defense. If she wanted a war, I was done hiding. I had the recordings, the texts, the proof, and now I was going to make sure everyone saw it. But before I could act, Linda did something I never expected. Something that crossed a line so deep, there was no going back. It happened on a Friday. I'll never forget that day for as long as I live. Ryan had gone out of town for another business trip, and I'd promised the girls a movie night. I picked them up from daycare, we made popcorn, and everything felt normal for the first time in weeks. For a few precious hours, it felt like I had my family back. Then I woke up the next morning, and my world collapsed. The girls were gone. Their beds were empty. The front door was slightly open. Their favorite stuffed animals were missing. At first, I thought maybe they'd gone outside, but when I ran into the yard, there was no sign of them. I called Ryan, sobbing, begging him to come home. He told me to call the police immediately, and I did. Within minutes, the house was swarming with officers. They asked if anyone might have taken them. I didn't hesitate. I said her name. Linda Jacobs. My mother-in-law. One of the officers exchanged a look with the other. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "your mother-in-law actually called us this morning. She said she picked up your daughters for a weekend visit, that you approved it." I felt my blood turn cold. "That's a lie," I shouted. "I never said she could take them." They checked the records, and there it was. A text message from my phone number to Linda's. "Thanks for picking up the girls early. Have a great weekend." But I hadn't sent it. Someone had cloned my number or used one of those fake messaging apps. She'd planned this. When the police finally tracked her down, she was at her lake house 2 hours away. My girls were fine, playing outside, completely unaware of the chaos. Linda greeted the officers calmly, with tea and cookies on the table, saying, "I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding." Sarah must have forgotten. I wanted to tear that smile off her face. They couldn't arrest her. Legally, She was family, and since the girls weren't harmed, it was labeled a custody misunderstanding. But I knew better. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a message. She wanted me to know she could take my children anytime she wanted. That night, when I finally got them home, Emma looked at me with those big brown eyes and said, "Grandma said you might not be our mommy forever. Is that true?" I broke down right there on the floor. And that was when I decided, I wasn't waiting anymore. I was going to destroy her, the same way she tried to destroy me.